I donated my kidney to my brother. His wife convinced him to cut me off 6 months later. The transplant coordinator's notes about who else had been willing to donate made for interesting holiday conversation. I found those notes in my mother's files while she was dying. She'd been organizing papers, preparing for the end, and there they were, buried in a folder marked Danny's medical. The evaluation records for Danny's kidney transplant. Everyone eligible had been tested. Mom, Dad, me, and Victoria. Her results weren't what I expected. Patient's wife declined evaluation, citing personal anxiety. No medical contraindication present. Patient eligible as living donor but unwilling to proceed. Victoria had been healthy enough to donate. She'd simply chosen not to. And then she'd convinced my brother to cut off the sister who had. Growing up, Danny and I were inseparable. 2 years apart. Same sense of humor. The kind of sibling bond that survives distance and time and the ordinary drift of adult lives. We had our own language. Inside jokes that dated back to childhood. References that made no sense to anyone else. We could communicate entire conversations with a single look across a crowded room. When Danny got married, I was his best man. He said he didn't want a groomsman, he wanted his sister. Victoria didn't like it, but Danny insisted. I should have paid attention to the way her smile tightened when he said that. I should have noticed a lot of things. Danny's kidney failure diagnosis devastated the whole family. It came out of nowhere. Routine blood work that revealed declining function, then months of specialists and tests that all led to the same conclusion. Polycystic kidney disease, genetic, progressive, terminal without intervention. He was 34 years old. Dr. Patricia Chen, his nephrologist at the University Medical Center, laid out the options with clinical precision. Dialysis can maintain function for years, but it's not a permanent solution. The transplant waitlist in this region averages 4 to 5 years. Your best chance is finding a living donor. A living donor? A family member? A sibling? Someone like me. I got tested immediately. The evaluation process took 3 weeks. Blood typing, tissue matching, psychological screening, physical exams that left no system unexamined. Dr. Robert Martinez, the transplant coordinator, called me with the results. You're a perfect match. Same blood type. Compatible tissue markers. You're an ideal candidate. When can we schedule the surgery? There's a mandatory waiting period while we complete the psychological evaluations. We need to ensure you understand the risks and that you're making this decision freely. I understand the risks. He's my brother. I know. But this is procedure. The surgery was scheduled for October 15th. My parents flew in from Florida. Victoria was there, of course. The devoted wife, crying in the waiting room, telling everyone how grateful she was. I remember her hugging me before I went into the operating room. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for saving him. Her voice was warm. Her eyes were cold. I should have noticed. Recovery was brutal. 6 weeks of pain, complications that extended my hospital stay, an infection that required antibiotics, internal bleeding that needed additional surgery. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital instead of 1, lost 15 pounds, missed 2 months of work. The scar across my abdomen still aches when the weather changes, but Danny was healthy. His kidney function normalized within days. The color came back to his face. He was laughing again, walking again, living again. That's all that mattered. Or so I thought. Victoria had never liked me. I realized this slowly, over years of small slights and careful exclusions. She tolerated my presence at holidays, but made clear I was competition for Danny's attention. When I called, she'd answer and say Danny was busy. When I visited, she'd find reasons to leave the room. When family gatherings happened, she'd position herself between us, steering every conversation. I told myself it was normal. Wives and sisters-in-law often had tension. She'd warm up eventually. She didn't warm up. She got colder. After the transplant, everything changed. The first sign came 3 months later. I called Danny to check in, something I'd been doing weekly since the surgery. Victoria answered. He's resting. I'll tell him you called. He never called back. I tried again the next week, and the week after that. Left voicemails, sent texts, got nothing in return. Finally, I drove to their house. Victoria answered the door with a thin smile. Danny's not feeling well. This isn't a good time. I just want to see him. 5 minutes. He really needs to rest. Victoria, I donated a kidney to him. I think I deserve 5 minutes. Her smile didn't waver. I'll tell him you stopped by. She closed the door in my face. I confronted Danny directly 2 weeks later. Caught him outside their house when Victoria wasn't home. He looked healthy. My kidney was doing its job, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Danny, what's going on? You haven't returned my calls in 6 weeks. He shifted uncomfortably. Victoria thinks we need boundaries. She feels like you're too involved in our lives. Too involved? I gave you my kidney, and we're grateful, but healthy relationships require space. Space. I stared at him. From the sister who saved your life. You didn't save my life. The doctors did. You just helped. Just helped. I'd given him an organ from my body, and I'd just helped. Victoria says my attachment to you isn't healthy, Danny continued. She says family enmeshment creates codependency. She read an article about it. An article. She's really educated herself on these issues. She wants what's best for our marriage. I didn't have words. My brother stood in front of me, healthy because of my sacrifice, repeating his wife's talking points like a trained parrot. Danny, do you hear yourself? I'm your sister. We've been close our whole lives. And now because Victoria read an article, you're cutting me off? It's not like that. Then what is it like? He couldn't answer. I need to go, he said finally. Victoria will be home soon. He walked back into into his house. The door closed. And just like that, I lost my brother. The first holiday without Danny was the worst. Empty chair at Thanksgiving. Mom kept looking at it, then looking away. Dad pretended everything was fine, talked too loud about football, drank more wine than usual. I sent Danny a Christmas card. It came back unopened. I sent birthday messages. They disappeared into voicemails he never checked. I tried emailing, got an auto reply. This address is no longer monitored. Victoria had helped him set up a new email, one that excluded me. Our mother tried mediating. She called Danny, wrote letters, showed up at their house unannounced. Victoria intercepted every attempt. Danny's not available right now. We're working on our marriage. Family interference is exactly what we're trying to avoid. I'll pass along the message, but I can't promise he'll respond. Mom called me crying after one visit. She wouldn't even let me in the house. My own son's house. I stood on the porch and she told me through the screen door that they needed space. From his mother? From everyone. She says family is too enmeshed. Says they need to establish independence. That's not independence, that's isolation. I know, sweetheart. I know. 2 years of silence. 2 years of holidays without my brother. 2 years of milestones he missed. My promotion, my engagement, and subsequent broken engagement. My move to a new apartment. 2 years of watching my parents age with grief, wondering what they'd done wrong, blaming themselves for losing their son. 2 years of carrying the scar of a kidney donation like a wound that wouldn't heal. I started therapy. Dr. Rebecca Okonkwo, 15 years specializing in family trauma and grief. What you're experiencing is complicated, she told me during one session. You made an extraordinary sacrifice for your brother, and instead of gratitude, you received rejection. That's a profound betrayal. I don't understand how he could do this. We were so close. From what you've described, Victoria has isolated him systematically, cut off his relationships one by one. That's a pattern consistent with emotional manipulation, possibly abuse. Abuse? Isolation is a hallmark. When someone convinces their partner that everyone who loves them is toxic, that family connection is unhealthy, that's control, not concern. I thought about Danny's eyes when he'd talked about boundaries, the way he'd repeated Victoria's words without conviction. Maybe he wasn't just abandoning me, maybe he was trapped. Then Mom got sick, cancer, pancreatic, the worst kind. Dr. Marcus Thompson, her oncologist, delivered the prognosis with gentle honesty. We can treat it, but I won't mislead you. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer has a median survival of 3 to 6 months. We'll do everything we can to manage pain and extend quality of life. Mom took the news with grace. I've had a good life, she said. I just wish I could see Danny one more time. I was there every day, coordinating care, managing medications, holding her hand through the worst nights, sleeping in the chair by her bed so she wouldn't wake up alone. Dad tried to help, but he was falling apart. Watching the love of his life die was more than he could handle. So it was me, day after day, week after week. I called Danny when the diagnosis came. Victoria answered. She's dying, I said. Mom is dying. Danny needs to know. Silence on the line. I'll tell him, but he may not be able to make it. May not be able to make it? His mother has 6 months to live. He has responsibilities here. Work is very demanding right now. Work? His mother is dying and you're talking about work? I'll pass along the message. She hung up. Danny visited once. Mom was in hospice by then, 4 months into her decline, barely conscious most days. He showed up on a Thursday afternoon, stayed for 45 minutes. Victoria waited in the car. I'm sorry I haven't been around, Danny said, standing awkwardly by Mom's bed. Work has been crazy. Mom reached for his hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were clear. I love you, Danny, no matter what. I love you too, Mom. Promise me you'll take care of Sarah. You two need each other. Danny glanced at me. Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or shame. I promise. He left 10 minutes later. Victoria was checking her phone when they drove away. Mom's final weeks, I found the transplant coordinator's notes. She'd been organizing papers, financial documents, insurance forms, medical records, preparing for the end with the same methodical care she'd brought to everything in her life. I was helping her sort through a box of files when I found the folder marked Danny's medical. What's this? From the transplant. She coughed weakly. I kept copies of everything, just in case. I opened the folder. Inside were the evaluation records from Danny's transplant, surgical notes, recovery documentation, and the donor screening results. Everyone eligible had been tested. Mom's results showed she wasn't a match, wrong blood type. Dad's showed he was ineligible due to high blood pressure and a previous heart condition. My results showed perfect compatibility. And then there was Victoria's file. Patient's wife, Victoria Chen, declined evaluation, citing personal anxiety. When pressed, patient stated she could not handle the medical process and was not comfortable with surgery. Physical examination revealed no medical contraindication to donation. Patient is healthy, matches blood type requirements, and shows compatible tissue markers. Patient eligible as living donor, but unwilling to proceed. I read it twice. Victoria had been a match. She could have donated. She'd simply refused. And then, after watching me sacrifice a kidney, after knowing I'd spent 6 weeks in recovery and months in pain, she'd convinced Danny to cut me off. She'd stood in the hospital crying about gratitude while knowing she could have been the one on that operating table. She'd isolated Danny from his family while pretending that my attachment was the problem. The notes shook in my hands. Mom, did you know about this? She looked at at the papers. Her eyes filled with tears. I found out after the surgery, Dr. Martinez mentioned that Victoria had declined testing. I didn't know what to do with the information. Why didn't you tell me? I thought if Danny knew, it would destroy his marriage, and he seemed happy. Before she trailed off. Before she isolated him from everyone who loved him, Mom closed her eyes. I should have said something. I should have fought harder. It's not your fault. It is. I let this happen. I let that woman take my son. Mom died 2 weeks later. Peaceful at least. Surrounded by family, Dad, me, my aunt who'd flown in from Oregon. Danny wasn't there. I'd called him the night before when it was clear the end was close. She's not going to make it through the night. If you want to say goodbye, you need to come now, Victoria answered. Danny's not available right now. She's dying right now, tonight. I understand. I'll tell him in the morning. There won't be a morning. She hung up. Mom's funeral was small, close family, a few friends who'd known her for decades. The hospice chaplain who'd been with us at the end. Danny attended. Victoria didn't. He stood at the back of the church, alone, looking like he wasn't sure he belonged there. After the service, I approached him. We need to talk. Sarah, not here, somewhere private. We went to Mom's house. The house we'd grown up in. The house that still smelled like her perfume and had her reading glasses on the kitchen counter. I handed him the transplant coordinator's notes without explanation. He read them once. His face went pale. He read them again. She told me she couldn't donate. Medical reasons. There were no medical reasons. Read it again. No medical contraindication present. She was eligible. She was a match. She just didn't want to. Danny sat down heavily on Mom's couch. Why would she lie about that? I don't know, but I have theories. The conversation that followed took 3 hours. Years of manipulation unpacked. Victoria's lies exposed. The pattern of isolation that had cost him his mother's final years. His sister's presence in his life. His parents' peace of mind. She said you were jealous of her, Danny said at one point. That you couldn't accept another woman being important to me. And you believed her? I didn't know what to believe. She was always so convincing. That's how it works. She isolated you from everyone who might contradict her narrative. Mom, Dad, me, anyone who knew you before her. Danny put his head in his hands. I missed 2 years of Mom's life. I wasn't there when she died, because Victoria said family was too enmeshed. She didn't want you to have anyone but her. That's control, Danny. That's abuse. I let it happen. You were manipulated. There's a difference. He stayed at Mom's house that night. Slept in his old room, the one with the Star Wars posters still on the walls. The next morning, he made a phone call. Victoria, we need to talk. I don't know what was said, but he came back into the kitchen looking like a weight had been lifted. I'm going to file for divorce. Because of the notes? Because of everything. The notes were just... He searched for words. They made me realize I'd been lied to, about everything. If she lied about that, about being able to donate, about watching you sacrifice while she refused, what else did she lie about? What else did she lie about? I'm starting to find out. Danny filed for divorce 2 months later. The notes weren't the only evidence he found. Once he started looking, he discovered years of manipulation. Financial accounts she'd hidden. Friends she'd alienated with stories about him. Job opportunities she'd sabotaged by telling employers he was unreliable. Victoria had been building a cage around him for their entire marriage. The transplant was just when she'd locked the door. The divorce was bitter. Victoria hired an aggressive lawyer, a woman named Patricia Walsh, known for scorched earth tactics in high-asset divorces. She claimed Danny was mentally unstable, that I had unduly influenced him against her, that the transplant coordinator's notes were taken out of context. Danny's lawyer, a man named Marcus Chen with 20 years of family law experience, countered with documentation. The pattern of isolation, the lies about the kidney, the financial manipulation. The judge, Patricia Hernandez, saw through Victoria's claims. Mrs. Chen, the evidence suggests a sustained campaign to separate your husband from his support network. The medical records alone demonstrate a pattern of deception. Victoria's composure cracked. I was protecting our marriage. By lying about your eligibility to donate? By cutting him off from his dying mother? Victoria had no response. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Victoria got the minimum required under state law. Danny kept the house, the retirement accounts, and, finally, his freedom. We're rebuilding slowly. Trust doesn't regenerate like kidneys. Some damage is permanent. But Danny calls weekly now. Shows up for holidays. Came to my birthday last month with flowers and a card that made me cry. I'm sorry, he said when he gave it to me. For all of it. For believing her. For cutting you off. For missing Mom's final years. You were manipulated. I still made choices. I chose to believe her instead of you. I chose isolation over family. He looked at my scar, the one that still aches when the weather changes. You gave me a part of yourself, and I threw it away because my wife convinced me it was a burden. The kidney wasn't a burden. I know that now. Victoria reached out once, a text message 3 months after the divorce was finalized. You destroyed my marriage with manipulation. Everything I did was to protect Danny from your unhealthy attachment. I hope you're happy with what you've done. I didn't respond. What would I say? I gave my brother a kidney. She gave him excuses. The transplant coordinator's notes just made sure he knew the difference. Some family members sacrifice. They give pieces of themselves, organs, time, love, without expecting anything in return. Some family members watch others sacrifice and then demand gratitude. They stand in hospital waiting rooms crying about how grateful they are, knowing they could have been the one in the operating room. I learned which kind Victoria was too late. Danny learned eventually. That's enough. I still have the scar. It runs across my abdomen, a permanent reminder of what I gave. Sometimes it aches when the weather changes. Sometimes I trace it with my fingers and remember the weeks of recovery, the pain, the complications. But I also remember Danny's face when he woke up from surgery with a working kidney. I remember the color coming back to his cheeks. I remember the brother I'd had before Victoria, and the brother I'm getting back now. The scar was worth it. Even the years of silence were worth it, because in the end, the truth came out. Victoria calculated that I was competition, that my love for my brother was a threat to her control. She calculated that if she cut me off, she'd have him all to herself. She miscalculated. Because the transplant coordinator kept notes, because Mom kept files, because some truths can't stay buried forever. I gave Danny a kidney. Victoria gave him lies. The notes made sure he knew the difference. And now he's free. That's enough. That's everything.